Hello, listeners. Yamina here. Welcome to the Dr. GPCR podcast. I'm very excited to bring you brand new episodes. These are the latest hot off the press. After these, we will take a break for the holidays, during which we will revisit some of our favorite conversations from the past 3 years. Then, in mid-January 2024, we will bring you brand new episodes again. If you'd like to join us as a guest, or if you have guest suggestions, please email us at hello@drgpcr.com. Before we dive into this episode, we would like to take a moment to thank our Dr. GPCR Ecosystem 2023 partners for their support. Domain Therapeutics, GPCR Therapeutics, Design Pharmaceuticals, Montana Molecular, and Orion Biotechnology. We had a blast talking about GPCRs in immuno-oncology at our last Dr. GPCR symposium held November 17th, 2023. With your premium Dr. GPCR Ecosystem membership, you can watch the stimulating conversation with our expert guests. We're already preparing the programming for the 2024 symposia. If you'd like to give a talk or suggest a speaker, please email us at hello@drgpcr.com. We're currently working on the Dr. GPCR University program to provide you courses and content on all aspects of GPCR research and support our community. Our first course will be held live starting January 25th, 2024, by none other than Dr. Terry Kinakin. More details, including the registration form, coming in December 2023. And now, let's dive into this episode. Hello, everyone. This is Yamina from Dr. GPCR, and this very early morning, I'm very excited to have with me Murat Tunaboylu and Ben Holland, who are the co-founders of a company called Antiverse. Ben, Murat, good morning, or good afternoon.
Hi, Yamina. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
Very excited to have you on. Very excited to have you on. I think this is the second time we're recording a podcast episode with two co-founders.
Okay.
Very, very cool. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Would you please introduce yourselves? And I'm going to point to you, Murat, and then Ben, you can go.
Happy to. My name is Murat Tunaboylu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Antiverse. My background briefly is in electrical engineering, computer science. Was a programmer for a long time. Then probably we'll get into that story later on, but eventually found my way in life sciences. And I was lucky to meet Ben in 2017, where we founded Antiverse.
Thank you, Murat. Ben?
Thanks, Murat. Yeah, my name is Ben Holland, also co-founder of Antiverse, but the CTO, in charge of machine learning and technical side of things. My background is I trained as an engineer, long-standing interest in biology, considered taking biology or even medicine at university, but engineering was the thing that really grabbed me. I've been doing machine learning for about 10 years now, and in 2017 I met Murat and learned about these wonderful things called antibodies, and I've been doing that ever since.
Very exciting, and it's so interesting to hear that neither of you has a formal training in biology or anything life sciences. You just stumbled into it. Can you both tell me a little bit more about the time where you met? Where were you in your careers at the time, and what sparked the ignition into what is known now today as Antiverse?
Yeah, actually, although now we are two co-founders, we started as three co-founders, and I think you would hear that story from a lot of other companies as well. And our third co-founder, Rovina, she was really good. She was covering the biology, a lot of experience with cell-free protein synthesis. So we had like three, if you will, foundations of the technology that we've been building. My role was to generate data, Ben was to build mathematical models, and Rovina was there to provide the domain-specific information. As things moved on, I think we kind of bulked up each of those divisions. And but as you might imagine, our background is in engineering, so we can be considered as almost outsiders and had to think a lot also differently and apply mostly engineering into a complex problem. For me, the situation was that I wanted to do something in life sciences. My father has been diagnosed with lung cancer and passed away in 2010. So that brought me slowly back into life sciences, thinking whether with my skills I can do anything about that topic. As you might imagine, for most of the people not having the proper biology training, the bioinformatics might be the first point of interaction. So I studied bioinformatics, moved to UK, worked for a company called Singer Instruments. And I always say this, it was like being a child again. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, Minehead, Somerset, a small town. We had this place with 30, 40 people at the time building lots of robots to automate E. coli and yeast-based cancer research. Imagine sitting there building some robots, and we were doing 95% of the stuff in-house. So robotic arm moving everywhere, you program the software and the hardware, and we had a ghetto lab. So I had to pour tons of agars, plate after plate. It was a nice experience. Though I felt like I should be a little bit closer to patients, maybe more of a therapeutics company. And I was mulling over that idea. By the way, Singer Instruments was super supportive, so they sent me to a lot of courses to get new skills. One of them was synthetic biology at the time. There was a course in Cambridge. And during this hackathon, synthetic biology hackathon, somebody came through the door. They said, oh, we are starting something called Deep Science Ventures. It's going to be an accelerator, a deep tech accelerator. And this, I imagine, is 2016, November, September, something like that. So I made a mental note of that. And a couple of months later, before they started the program, I quit my job, moved to London, and gave it a go. And that's where I met Ben.
That's amazing. Ben, I want to hear your side of the story, but Murat, let's put a pin into the moment where you quit your job and then you moved to London. I think that I want to dig later in a bit deeper into that, because it's a big move that you did.
Sure.
Ben.
So yeah, after graduating with a master's in engineering, I worked at a startup for 5 years, got loads of good experience, kind of realized that startups were the place to be for me. They were a really good fit. But I kind of wanted to do something myself. So I left in 2013 or thereabouts, and like I said, started training in machine learning, did some consultancy, sort of getting the ropes of working for myself and how all the business side of things works. And when I met Murat, actually, it was kind of I'd been in the wilderness years for a couple of years, you might say. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I was thinking of all kinds of things, like, do I do an MBA? Do I do a PhD? Do I just go and join a big company because that's an easy way out and it's predictable and there's lots of support? But I really had this idea that I wanted to start something, and I've been doing lots of brainstorming. And Deep Science Ventures came up on an entrepreneur's mailing list I was on, and I thought, hey, that sounds like a good kind of supportive way of doing something I want to do. And so yeah, I got in. I mean, to put into context, so I quit my job in 2013. I started Antiverse in 2017. And in the middle of that, I took some time off to look after my eldest son when my wife went back to work. I tried to start a ginger beer brewing company in London. It was kind of one of the fashionable things to do at the time. And yeah, I spent a lot of time just trying to think about what was going to come next. And if I'm honest, actually, it's easy to look back in retrospect and go, oh, it all worked out. It was kind of bound to work. But I was feeling quite discouraged at the time when I started Deep Science Ventures. Partly, I guess it was my kind of last chance of, maybe I'll just give up on all this and go and do something conventional. And thankfully, it worked out, and here I am.
Thank you, Ben. That's also an interesting, I'm happy that you both are telling us and the audience that you took a leap of faith. You knew kind of what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do. The majority of our audience are trainees, typically in academia, between the ages of 25 to 35. That doesn't mean that other people don't listen to it, but this is the majority of our audience. And I think this is the type of stories and information that is very encouraging to people, because it's hard. You're in the situation where you know what you don't want to do, and then the only way is to take a leap of faith and quit your job and do something else and find a path towards what you're interested in. Murat, let's dig deeper into the moment where you quit your job, you moved to London. What was that like?
What was that like? So actually, I think I had the bigger leap of faith in 2014, 15 when I quit a fintech job. I was working in Dublin in a high frequency trading company, in a quite comfortable state, let's say. And me and my partner at the time, now my wife, I told her, look, I want to do something in the life sciences, not in fintech. It's going to be a huge pay cut. It's going to be quite difficult, and it's going to be difficult for quite some time. But I think it was one of the things that I was really lucky with. So she was on board with that idea. So we first moved to UK from Ireland, from Dublin to a little village of 10,000 people, without even visiting the place, right? And so in that company, I really get to experience that. Okay, I want to do this, and I think I can do this. I have a shot at making a difference here. So that conviction has only strengthened, I think, after 2 years. So when I had the Deep Science Ventures opportunity, it wasn't, to me, it was a very easy decision to make. The finances wasn't a factor. The only thing was the visa, because I was on a work visa, and now I'm quitting my job and losing that visa as well. So I had to apply to a different type of visa, a businessman or entrepreneurship type of visa at the time. So my wife was working, so she had to quit her job too. We did, she stayed in a different city, and I was traveling back and forth to London for about 3 months. And DSV was kind enough actually to cover some of the costs, which made that jump a bit easier financially. Not to give a spoiler, but at the end of the 3 months after we had our big demo day to the investors, we got the money. But my visa didn't come through. So I had to move to Germany and stay there for a year till I had to sort all of that back.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. Wow. I think that's thank you for sharing these details. I think the audience I do appreciate listening and hearing these details, because it shows determination. It shows the reality of things. There is, financial hardship, but also there's visa issues, which I'm familiar with that, where you're stuck and you have to just wait for things to happen, and eventually they do come through. So we're in 2017, you're in this incubator at Deep Venture Science. You meet. How do you actually meet? What does that look like? And how does Antiverse start? Or did you, when you met and you started this program, were you already thinking about what today is Antiverse, or some form of Antiverse? Ben, I'll let you start us off.
There's a couple of good stories there. First one is day one. The first exercise we did at Deep Science Ventures was turn to your partner and in 3 minutes come up with an idea for a company. And it turned out Murat and I had both kind of been turning over in our heads this idea, but we both jointly came up with the idea of an artificial thymus, sort of autoimmune, training the body not to self-react. And if you could do that artificially, autoimmune disease. Maybe it's a good idea, maybe it isn't. It's not what we ended up doing, obviously. But we met, exercise one of day one, Murat and I kind of hit it off in that sense. But I didn't have the idea of antibodies. I was thinking, actually, for a bunch of DSV, Deep Science Ventures, I was thinking more along the lines of microbiome and self-tracking and things like that, having had a long-standing interest in that. But Murat and Rowena came up with the idea together first, and they had the first kind of inklings of this idea, and they wanted to sketch it out and bring it to some of the more computational people, of whom I was one, and say, this is what we're thinking. Can you pull it apart? Is this a good idea? Is there something there? And they gave a little presentation to a few of us, and we had a discussion. And I basically chased them down the corridor afterwards, going, "Let me in! I want to do this. This is my thing. Come on, let's do this. This is brilliant." And I guess my enthusiasm paid off, because they said, "Yeah, okay, let's work together on this." And that was kind of the seed of Antiverse.
Wow. Murat, how do you remember the events from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the thesis of the SV at the time was, let's get a lot of interesting people together and hope for the best. So they really gave a lot of room for creativity. You could just go and try to do whatever you want to do. And they were encouraging to split up teams and, break them apart, even if they are working fine, and then kind of self-assemble to a different team and try a different idea for the first maybe 4, even 8 weeks, and then mature that idea for a month and do a pitch to the set of investors and drag and then type of situation. However, I think it didn't even take a week for us to come up with that idea of, oh, let's engineer antibodies against targets, sequence, antigen sequence in antibody sequence out in one day, that kind of concept. We even have that presentation still, so I'm super happy about that. It's kind of a piece of nostalgia. First week, my teammate is actually somebody else. Haydin, he's the co-founder of MaterializeX, and they do amazing stuff so far. And he's also the name father of Antiverse. So he said, "Oh, antibody universe, why not Antiverse?" Right? And he also prepared the presentation. And then, as his background was not in biology, and he already had a different idea, so he went on to do his own thing and doing it very successfully. So I left kind of alone for a very brief period, looking for some help from biologists. And Rovina, among many others, had the kind of the best ideas and could kind of nurture where we could go with this antibody engineering concept. I think a few weeks into the program, we said, okay, we can generate data, and it seems like we understand the biology, so there is some real chance of pulling this off. But I cannot do the machine learning part, so who else? We brought in about maybe 6, 7 of them from Deep Science Ventures community and said, look, this is the problem. As far as we can tell, what do you think? So people were asking a lot of questions, but it was mostly Ben, you kind of ask all of the questions and had the answers to most of those questions too. So it was a very easy decision, right, at that stage. Okay, let's give it a go together. So we did that for a bit. And I think one of the other ideas we had, so I'm not sure, Ben, was it with you in the first week, but it was a cluster of robotic mice that would go through the sewer system.
I haven't thought of that for 6 years. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So once we exit from Antiverse, that's what we're gonna do.
So what was the job, or what would be the job of the mice in the sewer system?
First, checking that if everything is all right, the kind of a maintenance thing.
Okay.
The other one would be the recycling of certain materials and self-producing energy along the way. Because in Bristol, I've seen this slug-eating robot that was self-sustaining and going, on the moon. So I thought, we could do something like that with mice.
I love it. That's really great. All right, this is the Dr. GPCR podcast, so I have to ask. When do GPCRs come into play? So you can either directly give us a time when you thought about it, or we can think about, okay, so your 3 co-founders, Antiverse, the idea of engineering antibodies is built, and then you start your journey together. It's up to you. We can either go directly to GPCRs or tell us a little bit more about how you came to GPCRs. Ben, maybe I'll let you.
Yeah. So let's tell a story kind of briefly, skipping a lot of interesting details along the way. But as with many startups, I guess particularly machine learning startups, but startups generally, you get a little bit of money in order to get a little bit of evidence for your idea. Use that evidence, and you go and get a little bit more money. Use that money to go and get a little more proof, and you're kind of climbing up the ladder like that. And it's pretty standard for startups to go through some pretty rough patches early on when you don't have much evidence, you don't have much money. We couldn't afford to pay ourselves for a good 8 months at one point. It was pretty stressful. We had some setbacks technically, we had some setbacks financially, and some pretty tough patches. And At some point during that, quite understandably, we went down to two founders, that is. There are lots of reasons why people move on, but fundamentally it kind of wasn't what Rowena wanted to do or needed to be where she wanted to be. And no hard feelings there, of course. Very positive. And we're grateful for what she did for us. We wouldn't be where we were if it wasn't for her. But so we had this idea, the holy grail, if you like, of antigen sequence in, antibody sequence out. Everything works beautifully one day. Obviously, that's a challenge. And at some point, we realized that we're going to have to do something with a little bit more of an immediate payoff for customers if we're going to be managing to keep afloat and keep doing things. So we did a little bit of a data play. We switched tactics a little bit to say, okay, you're already doing these experiments. NGS is becoming a big thing, much cheaper, much more competent. With machine learning, we can actually just analyze that data for you. You can get better antibodies out of your experiments, the experiments you've already paid for. We get access to data, and we get some money, we get some credibility, and we can say to investors, look, we've got customers, this is valuable. And then that allows us to kind of keep going and show some commercial interest, some technical progress. And now we switch back to the original idea of antigen in, antibodies out. We've kind of dropped the one-day thing, by the way. And with that, we realized at one point that a competent antibody discovery lab can discover antibodies pretty straightforwardly if you've got a recombinant protein, a soluble protein. Immunization, phage display, it kind of works. There's always exceptions, there's always difficult things, but it kind of works. And so we said, okay, well, we don't want to do things that people can already do. That doesn't add value. We really want to make new therapeutics. We want to get medicines to people that couldn't exist before. Fundamentally, that's our goal as founders, as well as to build a big successful company. It's really to make more therapeutics. And so we started asking questions from customers, asking questions the whole way along, but we've started really digging down into what can't you do at the moment? Where can we do something that's new and different? And difficult targets was the answer that kept on coming back. There are a bunch of targets that are commercially interesting, therapeutically interesting. We just can't get any antibodies for them. And that was where GPCRs, the idea of GPCRs was born for us.
Amazing. Murat, anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, not how we ended up with GPCRs, but I'm really glad that we did, because we weren't, I think, aware how big of a problem that space. Now it is 3, but until very recently, it was only 2 FDA-approved antibodies against the whole GPCR family, and 60+ diseases associated with it. And I'm glad that we had that focus rather than saying, okay, let's build this thing for everything. We decided, no, let's pick one particular problem and focus on that. And that's how I found the Dr. GPCR podcast. That's why how we found some of the relevant people to what we are doing, and started to, I think that focus gave us a momentum to show more and more with the very limited resources we had at the time. And yeah, we are super excited about it.
No, and then you've made great progress. I know we, before we hit record, I said, let's record this podcast as we've never met. But the reality is that we actually met, and thanks. That's why you're here, and that's why I'm very interested in capturing this story, because I think your story is a very compelling one. Starting out with 3 co-founders, going through, having a background that is engineering and machine learning, which I think is to your benefit, because then you approach the problems, and in this case GPCRs, in a very different way. And I think with difficult problems, you need to look outside of the conventional. When I think about
I agree. Yeah, I think our superpower was being ignorant, right? So we didn't know how difficult the space is.
Yes, because you just go at it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember one of the early days, we were saying, okay, we need a lot of data. How many crystal structures we can get, and they're only a few hundred or 1,000, depending on how relevant they are to your problem. And then I found out, I think, that there is this institute in Japan. At their peak, they were doing 1 structure a day, And that is unbelievable, right? However, we need maybe 100,000 of them. So we pursued that NMR and all of that stuff to a point, and then so okay, this is a dead end right now. But I'm sure the technology will catch up eventually, and with AlphaFold and a few other things, you see that there are other ways to get to the structure. So, but that ignorance made us, pursue all of these things, and some of them worked out, and some of them didn't.
No, agreed. And when you look back to the field, to the GPCR field, I mean, every GPCR presentation I see, it has that graph that shows how many structures over the years we're getting, and we're getting so much better, especially now with cryo-EM. So it's just a matter of time where you can solve multiple structures in a day. I mean, I'm being optimistic here.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for that institute, they shut it down because it wasn't financially making sense, I think, at the time.
Okay, wow. All right, so you came up with the idea, you're thinking about antibodies, you have some, you have some customers, because obviously you have to generate revenue and get data in order to refine the models. And then what happened next? Murat.
So this is, I think, 2018. So there was a big moment for us, end of 2018, I imagine. So we lost a co-founder. We are a tiny team. We don't have any product market fit, losing the confidence of our investors as well along the process. And we have no revenue, no customer, nothing like that. And then everything started to change. I don't know, it was a moment of sudden realization or if we gradually came there, but we said, oh, look, with phage display, there's a bias of to a certain level expression over binding. So you pick some candidates because they express better in E. coli than binding to a particular target. So maybe we can fix that by using NGS and machine learning. So that was our first MVP, let's say, right? Minimum viable product. And with that, we started knocking doors. We found our first big pharma partner that brought in a lot of confidence in terms of commercial traction and some technical progress as well. And we get our first meaningful money. I think at that stage, it was all kind of pre-seed bits and bobs. After that, probably the biggest success we had that put us on the map was being able to design target-specific libraries and articulating why we are differentiated compared to a few other companies out there. And that value proposition, or we can give you a functional antibody in 6 months by developing high-expressing cell lines and target-specific libraries, that realization and being able to build the data to show that we can really do this was, I think, it kind of brought us to a different stage where we got $3 million convertible note, signed a couple of more deals, grew to a team of 17. We have 3 labs based in Cardiff. So it's a whole different company right now. Our first check was 70K. Now we burn more than that in a month, right? So it became a totally different thing.
I love it. I love
okay,
it.
that's a good 18 months, I think I recall.
Yeah. To burn through 70K. Yeah.
Wow. And what do your days look like today compared to when you started out?
Yeah,
Ben?
that's a great question. So my days, when we started out, all 3 co-founders, we kind of all shared all the hats. So we all did fundraising, we all did business development, we all did technical discussions, which is great. I really learned a lot in that period and I enjoyed it. And I'm really grateful that I don't have to do the business development and the fundraising as much as they did back then. I really come alive when I do a lot of technical work. But interestingly, back then I was also doing the majority of the coding, not all of it by any means. Murat was also got a software engineering background. but I was writing the first few iterations on machine learning models. Nowadays, I barely do any coding at all. In fact, most of it's, I've got a great team who are much better at it than I am, thankfully. So I'm more of a kind of leading the team, providing the scientific direction, sort of strategic decisions, communicating the business needs with the technical needs, working out what we can do, and of those things, what we should do. And if there are things we should do and we can't do, then how can we get there? So it's much more of a high-level role at the moment, which is, it's a new set of challenges. And it's also great fun. But I'm still doing enough of the technical work, enough of the sort of scientific thinking to keep that part of my brain active and satisfied.
Super. Murat.
Yes, that's a lot of fun. There has been multiple changes in what I do, but I would say the common thread is networking, communicating the vision. I mean, CEOs in general have two responsibilities: curate a vision, get good people together who can deliver on that vision, and then also go out and find the money so that they can be paid, right? I remember a slide deck from Deep Science Ventures with it, which it said, the job definition of CEO is doing everything that nobody else wants to do. So it was, I think, the situation for some time. However, now, because we have a larger team, there are a lot of people who can do certain parts of what I do much better than I can. So I'm more focusing on the fun bits, like fundraising, going and talking to pharma, see if we can help them in any way. And I think still a big portion of what we do is making sure that we have a culture that we are all happy about, and that is, put your people first, have this nonviolent communication as one of the main characteristics of the culture we want to build, and a few other things. And although we do not have 1 hour dedicated to focus on culture, it is something that we pay particular attention throughout the day and week.
I love it. And I checked out your website, and I think the first point about culture is people first, which I think is really great. I also want to share, you mentioned that you network, and I have to say you're a fantastic networker. You reached out to me a couple of years ago, and in your first email, the thing that struck me was that and I believe it was you, I'm pretty sure. I think this was the first email compliment that I received, saying that you listen to the podcast while you're running or while you're walking. And you said that I'm the voice in your head, which I thought was really phenomenal as a compliment. So thank you for that.
I mean, it was all true. It's still true.
Thank you. All right. I have a couple. I know that we're almost at the top of the hour and we have a stop. I want to also ask both of you, where do you see antivirus go in the next 5 years? And I know this is a question that you might be asked by investors and by potential partners, but in your wildest dreams, money aside, focusing on science, what does that look like? Ben?
Yeah. So one of the things that a few people talked about, so Pietro Sormani of Cambridge University and a couple of other people in the industry have said that AI is really like the third wave of antibody discovery. So first wave, immunization; second wave, phage display; third wave, AI. And I really think it's going to be one of those things that touches all parts of the industry for the better. Obviously, there'll be teething pains and there'll be times where it doesn't work, and there's going to be lots of learning on the way. But I think it's really going to open up an awful lot of targets that we couldn't access before, a lot of mechanisms of action, a lot of creativity, really. So already we're seeing some really exciting things in antibody design, moving from kind of discovery through to design, where realistically you just couldn't have discovered that through random search. And there's a few companies out there doing that. I think for antivirus, for me, putting my technical hat on, I think getting to a really high level of accuracy where we can really predict what's going on, for a particular antigen, we want to say, okay, let's hit this epitope, let's hit it in this way. We want it to come off when it's at a particular pH or calcium concentration, or we want to be able to bind two different things with a particular paratope, and just be able to really specify, to kind of give more power to the biologists. Because I think everyone says machine learning is a black box, machine learning is difficult. I think the biology is mind-blowingly difficult when we're talking about that. The complexity of human physiology is staggering. And just really being able to give the kind of power and the control to the experts so they can say, look, this is what we think, let's test this hypothesis. We'll say, okay, here's an antibody to do that. Did it work? Did it not? How can we make this better? Yeah. And yeah, fundamentally as well, like I said earlier, leading to better therapeutics.
Thank you, Murat.
So there's this US fund, so I hope I'm attributing to the correct people, Dimension Cap, and they wrote a letter to all tech bio people. That's a term that's being used quite a lot, software applying to biology problems as a platform. And there they mention math being treated as the language of physics. And in that sense, machine learning could be the mother tongue for biology, to capture that complexity, to be able to understand that complexity, and hopefully to be able to talk within that complexity. And I think as soon as you can do that, I mean, all bets are off, right? What we are doing right now is only one part of the whole drug discovery, whole drug discovery pipeline. There is the target identification, to efficacy studies, to clinic. And you see a lot of players actually using AI to solve portions of that problem, but biology is super complex and we are really not there yet with the capabilities we have. But I see more and more of that eventually playing out. I don't know if it's going to be in the next 2 years or 5 years, 10 years, but I definitely see a future where software as a drug concept being realized, right? It might be really sequence in, sequence out, you get a pill for yourself. It might be too far in the future, and maybe there will be another way of keeping people healthy, that you do not have to develop personalized medicines to the extreme. I'm very hopeful and excited.
Thank you. All right, I have two last questions. One, what are the top 3 aha moments that defined your career trajectory so far? That without those 3, you would not be where you are today. And while you think about that, I'll mention the second question is, what would be your advice for anyone wanting to become an entrepreneur in the life sciences? You can take
Ben, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, the thing that, in terms of taking the career as a whole, in sixth form college, so that's age 17 and 18 for those not in the UK, we had a graduate come over from MIT and set up a robotics competition. And he said, hey guys, there's this competition in the States, let's go enter it. Oh, by the way, we'll need to raise money to go over there. And the competition involves getting a game design on day 1, and at the end of week 6, you have to have a robot ready to ship. And that's really kind of what directed me into engineering in the end, that kind of excitement. And it probably what set me off on the entrepreneurial course as well, where going out and talking to people and just asking for money, getting a bunch of no's and then having to justify it and things like that. But solving problems in the real world was a really big change. And that's where I took my degree. And I think everything following that stemmed from there. I think the second one was in probably 2015. I trained a machine learning model to generate Shakespeare, taking after Andrea Carpathi's quite well-known example. And when I saw that happening on my own computer, I kind of went, okay, wow, this is going to be the future. Kind of exciting, a little bit scary, even back then. But that was a real kick of the direction that I knew I needed to take my career in. And I guess then third one, much more recently, probably 2017 or 2018, was when we had our first generation of machine learning models and we could actually make predictions about antibodies and sequences and, hey, this stuff works. I've actually got a company on my hands, because at that point, we were getting no's from left, right, and center. People would say, oh, no, it's not possible. They tried that 20 years ago. It's nonsense. And so that first kind of hey, look, this is working, was another
Yeah.
pivotal moment.
Thank you, Ben. Murat.
I mean, there are a lot of stories there, but I think if I have to focus on the people without whom this journey would be very difficult, one of them is the managing director of Singer Instruments, who gave me the chance to move to UK and become a bioinformatician. So that's Harry Singer. My wife, Tunaboylu, we moved maybe 10 times in 6 years, almost every 6 months, because of my job, my ambitions, I couldn't probably hope for a better partner in that sense. And I think, to tie this to the question you have, you need a huge support system around you. If you're on this journey of entrepreneurship, it's going to change you, it's going to change the people around you. And not everybody is up for that kind of a challenge, I think, in life. So that's something to check. The third one, I mean, it's my co-founder, Ben. Probably I don't say it enough, but I mean, without him, we wouldn't be here. It is not, and it's not, one big moment. Like, we talk every day, right? For the past almost like 7 years. I joked about this before, that probably I spoke to him, or I speak to him more than I speak to anybody else, my wife and my family. So you need somebody like that, right? The rest was a belief, the conviction that AI, software, machine learning can really make a big impact, revolutionize, if you will, the drug discovery. We always had that feeling. So I don't think for me there was a single moment that I would say, yes, this is now can be done. I think for me, again, out of ignorance, that was that was very clearly the future from very early on.
Any advice to anyone who wants to become an entrepreneur? I think, Murat, you touched upon it a little bit, and both of you, knowing what you don't want, a conventional job, like you mentioned, Ben.
Yeah.
Also having this drive of doing something good, being comfortable with uncertainty. What else? Jump in.
Yeah, I think having that, this kind of thing you can't help doing, that helps. Not everyone has that, but I kind of knew that I was going to pursue something. I tend to pursue things out of interest and passion anyway. So, as I've heard other people say that if you're starting a company in order to make a successful company or make money, that doesn't tend to work out so well as if you start a company because, hey, you're going to be interested in this subject anyway, and you kind of can't help doing something around it.
Yeah.
And then you can build a company around that interest and backed by it. I think the other part is, I think probably one of the most key skills or things to learn, because it is a skill, it's something you can learn and develop, is emotional regulation. As an entrepreneur, you get told no and it'll never work thousands of times over your career, literally. And to keep on coming back and to have that belief of, actually, no, I really think this is going to work, and to go out and persuade people. That's something that doesn't come naturally to everyone, but I think everyone can get better at it. Yeah.
Thank you. Murat, anything else to add?
I don't want to scare anybody off.
No, I think as long, well, actually, there's two things. The thing that transpired from our conversation is that you both got into this when you think about GPCRs out of not knowing the difficulties, but thinking about the problem differently. And that was a blessing based on what you were mentioning. But at the same time, I think it's good to know what you're starting off with, or what is the reality of things. But that might be maybe me who likes a reality check. You want to do something, figure out what's the foundation of that. So.
So this advice would only apply, I think, if you are in the deep tech or biotech. Have some capital that you can rely on for at least 12 to 18 months if you can, right? Because things are going to take much longer than you hope for. the fundraising is going to take longer as well. I think not raising enough soon enough slowed us down in a big way. We found ourselves in this vicious cycle of trying to raise money while trying to develop product. But if you focus on raising money, the product doesn't get developed, and then you cannot raise enough, and then you suddenly find yourself in the same situation again. And I think not having the financial buffer for us personally also makes you consider non-optimal solutions. And you prefer a term sheet, maybe financially better, although it may not be the best thing for other purposes and so on. So having a little bit, I think, personal financial safety would be a good thing to consider.
Yeah. And I think for the biologists in the lab, like I was, is having an idea about these terms that you just mentioned, the financial aspect of starting a business. You're in this, but I have to say, when I was in the lab, I had no idea what it was. What's a stock? What's a stock option? What's a term sheet? What's all of these things? So I think if you plan on starting a company, well, you have to have the passion, as you mentioned, Ben. The goal should not be making money. The goal should be following your passion, making a difference, and hopefully coming up with therapeutics for patients to help patients, but at the same time get educated on all the aspects, not only the science of the company. I think it's important for you to make the correct decisions at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's loads of good resources now for learning about that yourself.
Yeah.
I'll also add to Murat's about financial capital, relationship capital. So I'm also incredibly grateful to my wife, who's been there throughout many ups and downs on the journey. I think having a conversation with those near to you, your support network, whether you've got a partner or not, about what you're going into and what that might look like. Like Murat said, it often takes longer, it's harder work than you expect. And so having understanding of those around you is really, really critical.
It is. All right. And on these wise words, one last question. Where can people find you? What is the best way to reach out to you? Because I know you're in the GPCR space. Our audience is mainly GPCR focused. It's a big family. So, and I like to connect people so they can find me and then I can direct them to you. But if they wanted to talk to you a little bit more, where can people find you?
I mean, we live in our inbox, so our first name at Antiverse.io is easy to find. But I also spend most of let's say that I'm on LinkedIn more than I should be. So if they reach out to me, they're happy to reply.
I should say I'm on LinkedIn slightly less than I should be, but I will eventually reply to you there. But yeah, the email is the best way.
Fantastic. With this, thank you, both of you. I really appreciate your time, and also very happy that we got to record this episode and record the beginning and now the success of Antiverse. With this, we're going to stop recording and let people wonder what we're talking about after we stop recording. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a favor? Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Many of you come back to watch our videos but aren't subscribed. Having more subscribers will help us get you more content. Thank you for joining us and listening to this Dr. GPCR podcast episode. We would like to thank our Dr. GPCR guest, our team members, Attila, Ines, Montserrat, Ivana, Andreina, and Balint. A huge thank you to our 2023 ecosystem partners, Domain Therapeutics, GPCR Therapeutics, Design Pharmaceuticals, Montana Molecular, and Orion Biotechnology. If you like our podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. You can also leave us a testimonial at drgpcr.com/testimonials and subscribe to our newsletter. Another way to support us is to share your favorite Dr. GPCR program with your network and colleagues. Email us with any questions or suggestions at hello@drgpcr.com. Until next time, stay safe.